Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing here. Going to talk about the week's most prominent results in fighters and going to be handing out some fighter grades. And as always, you guys can definitely hand out your own down in the comments section below. Would love to hear them all, kind of what you think, what you agree with, disagree with, all that good stuff. Love to hear it all. Some interesting fights this week, as it were. Nothing major or anything along those lines, but we saw the final page of a sort of storied rivalry between Brook and Khan, as well as a title winning performance from Natasha Jonas, finally. We also saw another showcase event from Jaime Munguia that took place in Tijuana as well. Some, fights not of any major significance per se, other than maybe the Jonas one, of course, but some interesting scraps nonetheless. So, without much more ado, let's get into this and start handing out some grades. Now, the first fighter I'm going to be going with here is Kell Brook, who had a win over Amir Khan via 6-round technical knockout. This took place at a catch weight of 149 pounds, and the grade that I'm going to be going with here is a B. Now, the only real knock about the performance is that it came against a beaten-to-powder Amir Khan. It's hard to give him much higher of a grade when you think about the fact that Khan has certainly seen his greatest days far beyond him, and at this point, it just doesn't make sense to give him that much more credit for it. And now, again, he was made to look amazing in this fight because he was just up against someone who did not have much to offer by way of resistance, and he looked like he could maybe do some damage at 154 pounds. But there were still some technical flaws. He got a little too over the top sometimes and a little bit too overzealous. That being said, it's hard to say, again, Brook was an aged fighter going into this fight as well, so it's always hard to see how that would play out in the future. Still, he did look pretty good, regardless of who he happened to be in there against. Overall, could be one of his bigger wins just for what it means personally to him going alongside his title winning performances as well. I think it was a solid win for what it was, and that's why he gets the grade he gets. Now, second fighter we're going to be going with here is Amir Khan, of course, who had the loss to Brook, as I mentioned, in the 6th round. This, of course, was at that catch weight I mentioned, and the grade I'm going to be going with here is a D minus. Now, believe me, this is hard to give him that grade because I've always admired Khan. He has been someone who I looked at as two things. Number one, probably thought too highly of himself as a fighter, but I enjoyed that and appreciated it about him because it meant he was willing to fight anyone. And I mean basically anyone. With the exception of this Brook fight that we waited for so long, he was pretty much open to any and all challenges, and I always appreciated it about him. The problem is that he looked bad. And this is against a fellow fighter that also might be past his best days. That certainly is past his best days, and that's never a good sign. Khan has always looked chinny. Here, every shot that landed seemed to Bambi his legs. He just really had no control over his wits when it came to punch resistance at all. I sort of predicted that that could happen maybe later in the fight after maybe some flurries in the opening rounds bought him some time, but in this case there was just none of that. Even when he tried that, the moment he got tagged, it was nearly over. Might be time to walk away from the sport for good at this point for Khan, who I'm sure is going to take some time to think about it, but that sort of performance is going to get you that sort of grade 10 out of 10 times, and so that's how that goes. The third fighter we're going to go with here is Natasha Jonas, who defeated Chris Mannis via second round technical knockout, picking up the vacant junior middleweight title in the process, and the grade that I'm going to go with here is an A minus. She finally gets it done after a few tries and some really close calls against, decent fighters in many divisions, and she really just seems to fall short just right there at the last minute, or maybe just a couple rounds here and there, and finally managed to pull it off. And, moving up in weight to junior middleweight, you thought maybe she'd box, she'd move, she'd look to, pick her spots and kind of, coast to some sort of decision. But here, pretty much from the outset, she looked intent on trying to get something done, and she did. And it's pretty rare to get a stoppage in women's boxing, and the fact that she moved up in weight to do so, I think, is telling about how driven she was for this particular fight. And so, again, could have argued that maybe it's an early stoppage, though there was some confusion with the referee and the corner with the towel. It's hard to say. Did sort of feel as though this fight was only going to go one way after the first two rounds, nonetheless, and you certainly can't fault Jonas for that, so that's the reason she gets the grade she gets. It was a great performance after, again, many different tries at trying to pick her up her first title, and she finally does it here in pretty spectacular fashion, all things considered. Fourth fighter we're going to go with here is Jaime Munguia, who defeated Demetrius Ballard via 6th-round technical knockout in the middleweight division, and the grade we're going to go with here is a B minus. Now, let's start. He did what he was supposed to do. Got the big hometown win in Tijuana. That's what he's supposed to do. That's what Ballard was brought in for. A fighter with, he at least looks like an operating fighter, has a record that seems respectable. He's coming in to lose. That being said, he was a bigger man, and Munguia had to, adjust to that. The earlier shots, the jabs even of Ballard in that first round seemed to make sure that Munguia stayed on his toes, looked for his openings, was alert, used some head movement, and he kind of did that. Now, you did see some of those weaknesses he has in that first round, as I mentioned, where he just looks like he can get outboxed if he's not careful, if he's really not, at his very, very best against fighters who, have a slicker, more adaptable style that way. He might have some trouble. Still, he has that power. And he's got a solid chin, and he's going to continue to throw. And he's now knocking out guys who have competed as high as super middleweight and light heavyweight. So he certainly has power that could definitely torch someone if he does land that shot. And he has the sort of chin that keeps him in fights so long as the other guy isn't a monstrous puncher, which always gives him a chance to win. Was it the biggest win of his career at this point, or the biggest with significance? Of course not, so I can't give him too high a grade, but all things considered, he showed he could overcome some of those weaknesses he has. He showcased his strengths, got the win as he was supposed to, and moved on with his life. And the fifth fighter we're going to go with here is William Zepeda, who defeated Luis Viedes via 6-round knockout in the lightweight division. And the grade that I'm going to go with here is a C+. Now, I don't mean to give such a harsh grade for, a relatively quick night's work for him, but this was just a sloppy fight. It's really hard to get your head around what this fight really means for him. It's not that Zepeda looked awful, but he had no real dance partner in there for him to showcase those kind of skills you're hoping to see. And, I mean, let's just be honest here. His opponent did not want to be there. The ring was also an issue with it being slippery in the corner, and it just became this kind of ugly fight that you were just hoping everyone can get out of it without having some kind of weird injury to their leg that messes up their chances of ever being able to box again or something like that. It's a harsh grade, as I mentioned, because it's coming from the fact that it's sloppiness mixed with the fact that Zepeda didn't show signs of being a top level lightweight, which he really didn't. Again, maybe this was not the area to showcase that because he just wasn't given the shot, but I have to grade what I'm seeing here. And what I'm seeing here is, he's got some power. He still has it. Of course, it's going to be there. And he's a determined guy, but ultimately, this was not the showcase I think a lot of people were hoping it'd be for him on his team. And as a result, he gets the mark he gets. Honorable mention goes to Jermaine Ortiz, who defeated Nahir Albright via 10-round unanimous decision in the lightweight division on Friday, and the grade I'm going with here is a B. It was a solid performance. He boxed well. He had some sort of downtime in those middle frames, but coasted to an easy win, really showed some solid skills, even some power for him, which he sometimes seems like he might be lacking, but overall a very solid performance from him, and it's going to be interesting, rather, to see him kind of progress and get tougher tests a little bit more. Albright was supposed to be that, so you got to give him credit for that, but it's going to be nice to see how he progresses in his career, especially at lightweight where the competition tends to get thicker in boxing, so be interesting to keep an eye out on him. In any event, those are my grades, but what are yours? What do you have out as far as grades? What you're handing out? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB, and you can email me at jonboxing@gmail.com. Also, be sure to visit jonboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, rankings, and more. Definitely be sure to check out for my next predictions coming out later this week. And as always, until next time.